What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to this week's installment on the Laykshow. Now, I really appreciate all the support from last year, guys. Happy New Year. I hope all of you had a blessed holiday and you spent it well with your family and friends and everyone you cared about. So, like I said before, I'm very grateful. I said this in my last episode of 2023, and now we're in 2024. It's a new year and new objectives on the horizon. But once again, everyone, thank you so much for all of the support that you guys have given me over the past year. Like I said before, this has been life-changing for me in a way. I finally, have something to look forward to on a week-to-week basis. I really enjoy what I do, and I hope to continue that into 2024. And, we're halfway to 100 subscribers on YouTube, so keep those subscribes coming in. You're really helping out the channel. And yes, I am wearing the Deion Sanders Blenders glasses. I like to call myself Prime Time at work. All my bosses know this, and all of my coworkers are well aware of this now, that I call myself Coach Prime or Prime Time. And these glasses are nice, guys. I mean, it's a great Christmas gift. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Appreciate you guys. But either way, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, I want to do another sports episode. That's what we're going to get into today. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, that's for sure, but I wanted to take a minute and reflect on a little bit. I know I did a reflection video last week on 2023 and everything that is meant to me. I figured I'd go spend about 5 to 10 minutes just talking about 2023 in general. Well, like I said in my previous episode, I struggled with contentment at the beginning of the year, and not even the good contentment where I'm constantly growing and constantly striving for greatness and wanting to do more with my life. But at the beginning of the year, I really struggled with contentment, as in being content in the moment with, not being okay with anything. Like I said before, I was very close to not graduating college at all. Obviously now I'm a college graduate from YSU, thank God. But at the same time, my life was so uncertain at the beginning of last year. If you told me the amount of growth I would have had from last January 2023 to January 1st, 2024, if you told me everything I would have been doing this past year, I would have told you you're crazy. Like I said before, I reflected on my college experience. There was a lot of fun times in college, of course, drinking and stuff that got in the way of my studies. And really hindered my growth in a way. I was still immature, and don't get me wrong, everyone who's young and dumb, we're all immature in our own ways. We all like to go out and party, drink, have fun. That's what we all love to do. That's what everyone does. So don't feel bad about yourself if you still do it, because we all do it. We just all do it. College kids just go out, have fun, get drunk. That's typically what it is. But like I said before, at some point, you're going to get that kick in the ass that you're going to need to get your life in order and really prioritize things that matter most in life, especially when you want to propel yourself forward and stuff like that. It's really kind of surreal. In case you guys don't hear that, that's a coffee maker. Apologize. Recording in Stone Fruit, my OG studio. I really appreciate this place. Great coffee, by the way, so stop in at your local Stone Fruit, that's for sure. Best coffee on planet Earth. That's a guarantee. That's Dom Lako's guarantee. That's for sure. But, 2023 taught me a lot. And the one thing I really wanted to tell people is this. So, like I said before, I struggled with contentment for a long time. And I didn't have anything to look forward to. And honestly, I still spiraled out of control a little bit when it came to dealing with everything that I went through in my past, or all sorts of other issues that life just decided to throw my way. There's one thing, though, that people may not realize, and it's this. And I've come to realize this the more time goes on. And obviously, like I've reiterated so many times, leaning into my faith has been the biggest game changer in my life, for sure. And I couldn't be more grateful that I actually mustered up the courage and took that step to, better myself in so many other ways. And I feel like religion was missing from my life. a sense of purpose, a sense of love. And other people feel, and I want to talk a little bit about love for a second. Love is dangerous and it's beautiful. It's the greatest feeling on planet Earth, but for some people it could be the biggest struggle on planet Earth. And one thing, and this is when I'm talking about like relationship-wise. The more I have lived my life, and especially throughout 2023, the best love you can get comes from yourself. There is no point in trying to love someone else when you yourself don't have that same connection with your own feelings. It makes it harder to love other people when you don't love yourself fully. And that's when life really started to change for me, is when I started to love myself again. When I started to love the person I was for who I am. Obviously, I had my issues. I still have my issues. I'm not perfect. The only one who's perfect is my Lord and Savior. And honestly, he saved me. He definitely did. But the biggest thing I can say that I learned throughout 2023 is, life taught me so many lessons. But the biggest lesson I learned was your life gets drastically better when you worked on yourself and you start loving yourself again. So that's one thing I do want to reiterate to people is love yourself. Go out and strive to be great. Do something you're passionate about. Just go out and be great. Try something new. There is nothing holding you back when it comes to trying new things. If you're miserable in your life currently, in your current state, not doing anything is just going to continue to make you spiral out of control. That's just how it is. It's scary to take that first step to better yourself. It's always going to be scary. But the scariest part is staying where you're uncomfortable. Staying in that dark mental place. You just get a feeling of hopelessness when you stay there. I've been there. I was there for 5 years, and I didn't see any way out. But like I said, I worked on myself. Time heals everything, but it only heals if you work within the time period given. You can't just expect time to heal it on its own. If you just go through the motions of life and not changing one single thing and expecting it to get better, well, that's insanity, and you're just going to be stuck in the same hamster wheel that you've been on for the past couple years. I know I was. But once you put your life into perspective and realize that nothing is always as bad as it seems. Everything happens for a reason in this world. Start loving yourself. Start going out and trying new things. Don't depend on anyone else for your happiness. If anything, other people in your life can add happiness on top of yours. They shouldn't be the sole providers of that. My sole provider of my happiness has been me leaning into my faith, which has bettered me as a person. I still struggle. We all do. I'm not a perfect Christian, and nobody is. I will never be able to live up to my holy God's standard. And I'm ashamed of that, but that's because we were all born sinners. That's just the truth of it. But, every day I'm going to try and strive to be a better man in that aspect. But the whole gist of it is learn to love yourself again. Take strides to better yourself. Don't rely on others to fill that void that you may have in your soul. Don't look to others to bring you happiness when you yourself are not happy. That gets you nowhere in life. Work on yourself. Time heals only when you put in the work in that given time. You can't just sit around and do nothing, because we all know where that gets you. It gets you nowhere. I'm living proof of that. Anyone who has struggled with that knows the struggle of just doing nothing. But doing nothing is the worst thing that you could do. Try new things. Go out and be great. And start loving yourself again. Better yourself. Fill your own heart with happiness. Lean into something that'll make you happy. Like I said, don't rely on others for your happiness. Be happy with who you are as a person. Be happy with who you are becoming as a person. I'm not happy fully of who I am as a person, but I'm very happy of the direction I'm heading. And that's all that matters. Be content with the person you are becoming, not the person you are currently, because like I reiterated in my last episode is you are constantly growing, you are constantly evolving, you are constantly being put in new situations and different circumstances that are going to test you in your life. It is your job to overcome it all. It's your job to endure it all. It's your job to endure all the struggle, all the pain, all the heartbreak, everything. It's meant to make you a better person. But I can tell you this, life gets so much better. If you are struggling right now with anything, life gets better drastically when you start working on yourself and loving yourself again. It's just the honest to God truth. And I thank my Maker every single day that, I'm still striving to be that better person. And life got better once I started loving myself again. And I know for a fact it'll do a lot for those who are struggling out there with anything. Love yourself. And work on yourself. Time heals, but only if you work in that time. So, that was my little tangent. I really, that's when I'm in my zone. I don't know what it is. It's just, people confide in me, and I get it. Probably because I've been through so much, and that, I know how to handle certain situations, but at the same time, I'm not perfect. I'm no doctor or anything like that. I just know what works and what doesn't work. So I know that for a fact that what I say is true. I genuinely feel like everything that I've said to everyone when it comes to the mental health issues that Gen Z and everyone faces in this world, it's the truth. I'm not going to invalidate anyone's feelings or anyone's struggles that they're going through, because one way or another I can relate, whether that be the actual circumstances you're put into or the mental circumstances you may be feeling. Trust me, everything that could have been thought, I thought of. So it's okay to feel that way because you're not alone. Like I said, you just got to work on yourself. Now, it takes time for that. Obviously, it doesn't happen at the snap of a finger. That's for sure. Anybody who wants a quick fix, guess what? You're not getting one. It's not a quick fix. If you feel broken, don't expect things to change overnight, because they're not. It took me 5 years to deal with everything. And it took me over a year to finally perfect my process of how I deal with things. That's just the truth. And, I really enjoy doing that. I really enjoy trying to reach out to people to help them. I've struggled mightily in my life, but I don't want others to go down that same road. It's not fun. It makes life miserable, and it makes life really hopeless sometimes, but just know whatever you're going through, you're not alone. Someone out there has experienced the exact same thing that you are currently experiencing. If you are in that depressive or anxious mindset, it's okay. Things get better in time when you work on yourself in that time. Like I said, start loving yourself again. Go out and be great. Go out and try new things. Go out and work on yourself. You're going to benefit yourself in the long run. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty of everything. There's a lot of things I want to talk about, and let's start off with this. Cleveland. Rise up, guys. I've never said this before in my life. I am 24 years old, and I've never said this before in my life, but I'm going to say it now. You heard it here first. The Browns are legitimate Super Bowl contenders with Joe Flacco at quarterback. Congratulations, Cleveland. You finally have an adult at quarterback. It is beyond baffling to me that they brought Joe Flacco in off the couch, and he's performing way better than anticipated, that's for sure. And he's performing way, way better than any of the Browns quarterbacks have in the past 10, 20 years. And he's been, 5 games on the Cleveland roster. here's a couple things I want to know. Flacco's making this all look so easy. But let's be real. There's an aspect of this that I feel like a lot of people might be overlooking. And I don't think I'm the only one who thinks this. Flacco is playing so well in this AFC because it is by far a weaker AFC than Joe Flacco's prime years with Baltimore. If you really think about it, Joe Flacco had to face Ed Reed, Haloti Ngata, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Marcus Peters when he was in his prime, in practice every single week. And every single year in Joe Flacco's prime, he had to go up against probably some of the best Pittsburgh Steelers teams ever, at least best Pittsburgh Steelers defenses of all time. James Harrison, Lamar Woodley, Troy Polamalu, Ryan Clark, James Ferrier, all of those guys. Joe Flacco in this AFC is light years ahead of some of these other quarterbacks, specifically based off the competition that he's had to go up against. I don't think it's any coincidence that Joe Flacco is just playing as well as he is. Now, people are going to be hammering me for saying that because, what happened with the Jets? Don't sit there and tell me that the Jets have nearly as good a roster as Cleveland does. If Nick Chubb was healthy, I would say that the Browns are surefire Super Bowl winners. And I never thought I'd ever say that in all my years of living right now. But right now, in the 5 games that Joe Flacco has been the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, obviously this is excluding this upcoming week with... Actually, no, never mind. I forgot. The Jets, they already played the Jets and they whooped their asses. But Joe Flacco, his stats right now for the regular season, 1,616 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 picks. Obviously, the 8 picks are a little concerning, but that's just because some of the defenses he went up against, they're decent. Like Jacksonville, Chicago's defense is actually playing really good, surprisingly. But Flacco was never known to always have perfect games. He was a pick machine sometimes when he was with Baltimore or the Jets. You know, that's just in his DNA. I find it hysterical that, what do you do with Deshaun Watson at this point? If Joe Flacco leads Cleveland to the AFC Championship or even the Super Bowl or wins it, Cleveland, the whole city's going to burn down. That's for sure. Cleveland threw a parade, a massive parade, when the Browns went 0-16 years ago. The parade that they had when the Cavs and LeBron James won the title against Golden State, I saw the live feed from Cleveland. That was unreal. And I can only imagine what it would be like if the Browns won a championship. That city would burn to the fucking ground, that's for sure. But I just find it so amazing what Joe Flacco is doing. Here's the thing. Browns have always been a turnstile at quarterback. That's just how it was. That's just how it's been for the past 20 years. Bust after bust after bust. The Johnny Manziel draft pick didn't make any sense. I still remember when Skip Bayless said that Johnny Manziel was going to be bigger in Cleveland than LeBron James could ever dream of. Yeah, that aged real well, Skip. I swear to God, Skip Bayless takes are the most asinine things on planet Earth sometimes. Sometimes I agree with him, but that's very seldom. That's like 1% of the time. The other 99%, this dude's full of shit. But Baker Mayfield, now he's playing well right now. And we'll talk a little bit about Baker Mayfield in a little bit. But Cleveland, drafting Baker Mayfield, I understood it. Heisman Trophy winner, always played with a chip on his shoulder, had a little swagger to him, but wildly cocky, immature, obviously not great at the podium, not a great locker room guy at that point in time. He was younger. He was, we're all young and dumb and naive sometimes, When you get a little ego to you, you tend to act, the part. But, Baker just wasn't ready to handle Cleveland or that city, for that matter, as a number 1 overall pick. Expectations were through the roof for Baker Mayfield to do something in Cleveland. Did get him one playoff win and a playoff berth against Pittsburgh. I still remember that like it was yesterday. God, that was horrible. So you move off of Baker Mayfield. I said Cleveland should have stuck with him. Now, obviously, my mind has changed because Flacco clearly is the best one out of the bunch, but you move off from the cocky, kind of immature Baker Mayfield at the time, which I thought at the time was a correct move, but giving Deshaun Watson that contract was ridiculous. Baggage, shitty human being. It's just, that never worked. And Watson was supposed to be a world beater class quarterback. He was supposed to be top of the top of the AFC, battling along with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, but that just never happened. Watson, you can't just take a year off of a profession and expect to be the same dominant player you were immediately when you get back. That's just not the case. And Deshaun Watson, even beforehand, before all this crap, he wasn't the greatest quarterback, but he was certainly the reason Houston was relevant for a number of years. When Watson played, obviously they always had a shot to win, but ever since he got to Cleveland, it's just been a mess for Watson. Obviously the allegations are bad enough, and this is why, terrible human being. He was a great player at the time, but not anymore. Where do you go from here? Cleveland. I think you move on with Joe Flacco. Think about this. You have, obviously Nick Chubb is hurt, but Jerome Ford has been very serviceable. You have David Njoku, who all of a sudden is looking like the next great tight end in the NFL. It's almost like you needed and people in Cleveland were I know some people from Cleveland or who were Cleveland fans who were bashing Njoku, saying they wanted to see more out of a first-round pick tight end. Well, who's the quarterbacks that are getting him the ball? None. Baker didn't use him. Watson never looks his way. Flacco utilizes his tight end. He's always utilized his tight ends. Same way Ben Roethlisberger always did. Having a tight end is such a great safety net for every quarterback. A reliable catching tight end. Now, Njoku struggled with some drops and everything like that. We get it. But right now, him playing with Flacco, David Njoku's looking like a Travis Kelce or a George Kittle. Like, he's playing out of his mind right now. And it's almost like they needed a grown-up at quarterback to make that happen finally. The great quarterbacks. Now, I'm not saying Joe Flacco's great. He might be a Hall of Famer one day. Who knows? But the thing about Joe Flacco is no ego, grown up, no baggage, coachable. All qualities you want in your starting quarterback. Doesn't matter what franchise you are. You want all those qualities with that guy. And especially the no baggage situation. It's, Baker came with baggage just because of his cockiness and everything like that. His constant chip on his shoulder. Watson, baggage, allegations. We get it. It's ridiculous. Still think he's a horrible human being, but it's kind of crazy. So, darn, I lost it. But here's what I'll say. I looked up some stats of David Njoku playing with Watson and playing with Flacco. David Njoku has 30 catches for 390 yards and has scored 4 touchdowns. That is in 5 games with Joe Flacco. I'm going to look up his stats real quick that I accidentally X'd out of it like an idiot. But I know for a fact that... Okay, here we go. So, like I said before, David Njoku playing with Joe Flacco at quarterback has 30 catches for 390 yards, 4 touchdowns in all 5 games that Flacco has played. So now we go on to the stats with Watson. David Njoku has 42 catches for 394 yards and 3 touchdowns in 11 games with Deshaun Watson under center. It's almost like you need a grown-up at quarterback to actually feed him the ball. David Njoku is actually a good tight end. Nobody wanted to give him credit for it, but guess what? You can attribute that to Deshaun Watson because he never looked his way and barely threw to him. Joe Flacco trusts him, and he's been one of Flacco's best safety nets. David Njoku is such a great tight end. He really is. And he needed a grown-up at quarterback to finally stand out. And I'm happy for him. He was one of my favorite players at the University of Miami. He's an upstanding guy. He's just great all the way around. It's finally refreshing to see Cleveland utilized in the way he's meant to be used. He's not a complete package blocking tight end. That dude's a runner. He's big, tall, strong, athletic. He's a gamer. He's a freak at tight end when used properly. And right now, Cleveland is using him properly. Another thing I wanted to mention. So in 5 games, Flacco has played for Cleveland. Like I said earlier, 1,616 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 picks. That's in 5 games with Cleveland. Kenny Pickett, 2,070 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 4 picks this entire season so far. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. Pittsburgh fans, enough defending Kenny Pickett. I still know some people who do defend him. It's done. It's over with. Guess what? Mason Rudolph against the Bengals, that was the best Pittsburgh Steelers offense looked all season long. George Pickens he's an animal. George Pickens should be considered up with the Justin Jeffersons of the world, with the Jamar Chases of the world, with the Stephon Diggs, the Mike Evans of the world. George Pickens should be considered one of those top-of-the-line wide receivers. But he isn't because of the shitty quarterback play that Pittsburgh has had all this time. I'm sorry. Anyone who is still defending Kenny Pickett, it's done. It's over with. Even Mitch Trubisky, I still don't get why we signed Mitch Trubisky in the first place. We still had Mason Rudolph under center, and clearly Mason Rudolph has been under center for Pittsburgh before. He did fine. He wasn't great. I'm not saying Mason Rudolph is the savior of Pittsburgh, but, he's better than Kenny Pickett, and he's certainly better than Mitch Trubisky. That's just the case right now. Plus, he's been in the system longer than either of those other two. I don't get it. This is why Pittsburgh is so frustrating. It's ridiculous. It's absurd that our third-string quarterback will go in and play lights out. I looked at my family members when Pittsburgh, after that first drive, that slant pass to George Pickens that went for an 80-yard touchdown, I said, Mason Rudolph is going to mess around and throw for 300 yards. And he threw for 290, so I was pretty spot on with that. But that was like one of the cleanest games I've ever seen out of a Pittsburgh quarterback since Big Ben played years ago. It's just baffling to me. It really is. Pittsburgh, it's time to move off. I'm still going to be called crazy for suggesting this, but get on the phone with New England and Arizona. Get on the phone with one of those top 5 picks. Offer them up. Minkah Fitzpatrick, even though I love Minkah, I don't want to see him leave, but honestly, he hasn't done much in safeties. There are a few great ones, but at the same time, safeties are easily replaceable. Quarterback is the hardest position to draft in the NFL, and it's not even close. It's the hardest position to draft and the hardest position to get right. So I would honestly get on the phone, offer up Minkah Fitzpatrick, 2 first-round picks, and a second-round pick. Hopefully to get one of those top 5 picks and draft Michael Penix Jr. That's what Pittsburgh should do. Don't trade any of the offensive pieces because you're going to need them. Obviously, rookie quarterbacks with weapons, it's a good thing to have. So I would not trade any offensive pieces, but you can definitely afford to, trade off some of those defensive pieces. I mean, it's not like Pittsburgh's defense is doing great this year either way. I mean, Watt is still an animal and still the best defensive player in the league, and nobody is going to convince me otherwise. So that's where I stand on Pittsburgh. I never thought in a million years that Pittsburgh would finish last in the AFC North, but they're going to, probably. Obviously, the Browns clinched that playoff berth. Good for them. Honestly, good for Cleveland. It's nice to see them do something good. That's for sure, even though I've shit on them my whole life. But either way, it's still great. It's still absolutely fantastic to see. So let's transition a little bit. Baker Mayfield. He's quietly having one of the best damn years of his life in the NFL. Obviously, like I said before, he came into the league, chip on his shoulder, a lot of swagger, a lot of ego, eager to prove himself to everyone. Obviously, Cleveland was dysfunctional in the first place. So, when you have a good coach and a great quarterback, you can right the ship a little bit. But I wouldn't consider Baker Mayfield a great quarterback. I definitely think he's a starter in this league. I definitely think he's a franchise quarterback. It has to be with the right team, the right coach, the right system, and everything. And right now, Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in that whole division. Derek Carr, he stinks. Desmond Ridder, god-awful. Bryce Young, he's a rookie. And signs are showing that, he was not worth that first overall pick. Now, granted, he has nobody to throw to at all. Carolina easily has the worst roster in the NFL, and I don't necessarily think that's close. But Baker Mayfield is easily the best quarterback in that division, and it's showing. Baker Mayfield's going to leave Tampa to the playoffs. And if I'm the Dallas Cowboys or a team like that, because if they win the division, obviously the record isn't fantastic, but they'll still host a playoff game because of their because they won the division. I'm just saying, if I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, I wouldn't want to go play in Tampa. The way Tampa's humming right now, they're playing great. So here's the stats for Baker Mayfield this year. 3,598 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. We're going to play a blind quarterback resume real quick. So I mentioned Baker's stats. I'm going to give you a quarterback with similar stats, but I'll let you guys decide who's having the better season. This quarterback has 3,938 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. Can anybody guess who that is? Now, Baker Mayfield has around 400 yards less than this other quarterback, and he has the same amount of touchdown passes, obviously subject to change after this past weekend, but 400 less yards, the exact same amount of touchdown passes thrown, and 6 less interceptions than this no-named quarterback. I'll give you 5 seconds to guess. Did you guess Patrick Mahomes? Because it's Patrick Mahomes. Baker Mayfield is having just as good a year as Patrick Mahomes is. And I don't think anyone wants to talk about that. Obviously, I am not saying Baker Mayfield is better than Patrick Mahomes. I am not saying that. However, Patrick Mahomes is not as great as, he usually is. It really helps having Tyreek Hill, didn't it? Patrick Mahomes has to rely on these young kids as receivers. Kadarius Toney stinks. All the Chiefs wide receivers absolutely are horrid. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago. They can't catch a cold. They can't catch COVID. That's how bad they catch. And Baker is showing up Patrick Mahomes this year. I think it's pretty impressive just to see how similar the stats are this year. Patrick Mahomes got away with a lot of things when Tyreek Hill was on the Chiefs. That was basically Patrick Mahomes' safety net. Travis Kelce, he's old, he's brittle, he's getting more hurt. So he's not as reliable as he was before. Plus, it opened up everything else for Travis Kelce because you couldn't double-team Kelce and you couldn't double-team Tyreek Hill. One of those guys is going to be open. And half the time, it felt like Patrick Mahomes' favorite play was just chuck it, fuck it, Tyreek Hill is down there somewhere. But it would really help keeping Tyreek Hill, wouldn't it, Kansas City? Maybe you should have let Travis Kelce go because, while Travis Kelce is a great tight end, he's old, he's brittle, starting to get more injured, and Tyreek Hill is still humming, having one of the best seasons of his life with Tua at quarterback for the Dolphins. But, I just think it's cool that Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes are like neck and neck almost when it comes to stats this year. Personally, between Joe Flacco and Baker Mayfield, I don't know who I would give comeback player of the year to. Kevin Stefanski of Cleveland gets coach of the year, no doubt. This is their 4th quarterback they're on, and they're going to win they can still clinch the number 1 seed in the AFC. If that doesn't say something about coaching, I don't know what does. Kevin Stefanski is easily the coach of the year after being on his 4th quarterback, Joe Flacco, no less. And he has his team humming right to the playoffs, that's for sure. But as far as comeback player of the year, honestly, I would give it to, personal bias, I would give it to Baker Mayfield just because of the season he is having. I think he's doing so well because there was no expectations for him. Obviously, as a number one overall pick, he had the expectations of the world on him. Being a number one overall pick, quote unquote, was supposed to be the savior of Cleveland football, but that just didn't happen. When he went to Tampa, no pressure, no expectations. He's just cool right now. Confidence at an all-time high. Baker Mayfield, when he has confidence and time to throw, is one great quarterback to watch. That's for sure. It's a crazy time, man. NFL is just nuts right now. And we're going to transition a little bit. And it's kind of crazy because... One sec. Okay. So it's kind of crazy watching college football unfold as it is right now. A lot of issues when surrounding college football right now. Obviously, we're going to talk about something just real quick. Everyone wanted to shit on Miami because we lost to Rutgers. Here's what I'll say to that. Okay, we had our third string running back in, basically our third team offensive line playing, and some of our starting wide receivers, and our third string quarterback, and our two All-American safeties opted out and declared for the draft, among other players that did opt out. Yeah, we're so bad. What happened to Ohio State? You guys had backups. Your quarterback situation is just as bad as Miami's. Hell, Kyle McCord would have played better than your backups did. I couldn't remember the last time I saw Ohio State play that horribly. Obviously, and this is where I'm going to talk about the bowl games a little bit, but Ohio State looked horrible. Ryan Day is 0-3 against the SEC, and he is 0-3 against Michigan. Clock's ticking, Ryan Day. If Ryan Day wants to keep his job after next year, one, he either has to beat Michigan, and if he doesn't beat Michigan already, I think he'll be fired after that. But if by some miraculous case that he does not get fired if he lost to Michigan again, he better pray to God that Ohio State does good enough to be considered into the college football playoff. And then he would have to win a national championship. I think that would be the only way that Ryan Day would keep his job. But even then, I still don't think that he could. I still don't think that he would survive losing to Michigan again. I just don't. I don't see that in the cards for him whatsoever. But one thing I do want to talk about, though, like I mentioned, Ohio State was on their backup players and everything, and so were a lot of schools. Something to keep in mind is that a lot of players opt out of the bowl games because of injuries, because of NFL projections, all of this stuff. And I don't know how I feel about it, but I can definitely tell you I want to see the bowl games abolished, especially moving into a 12-team playoff next year. I want to see every other bowl game abolished, and I only want to see the college football playoff from now on. I cannot stand postseason college football unless it's the playoff because there's no stars playing. There's no great players playing. We don't want to watch shit show football. Missouri against Ohio State, that was garbage. 15 punts, 3-0, basically midway through the fourth quarter still, until Missouri finally wore down the Buckeyes defense because Ohio State was so inept on offense they couldn't do anything. They couldn't move the ball to save their life. All they did was want to try and run the ball because their backups sucked. But I'm tired of seeing horrible college football games, especially because players are opting out. Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner, opted out. Jared Verse from Florida State, probably the best defensive end in the country, opted out. NFL. Keon Coleman, Florida State, opted out. Joe Milton, quarterback for Tennessee, opted out. See, it's just like Marvin Harrison Jr., probably the biggest name out of them all, opted out, was on the sidelines during the Ohio State game. As consumers, who the hell wants to watch these bowl games when it's all backups playing? It's a glorified scrimmage at this point. That's all the college football bowl season is anymore because all these kids are opting out and everything. Who wants to watch that? Unless it's the college football playoff. That's the only football that's worth watching when it comes to college after the conference championship games. I think college football should completely abolish the bowl game system and just move in with the 12-team playoff and nothing else. All teams in America are competing for those 12 spots. That's it. No more bowl game shit. No more of these crap, the Pinstripe Bowl, the Cheez-It Bowl. Like, who gives a shit? Keep the New Year's Six bowl games, obviously, but obviously they're going to be incorporated into the 12-team playoff. But it drives me insane that it drives me insane that all these players opt out, and I understand the reason for opting out, but it makes the sport so unwatchable because there's either so many blowout wins or there are so many boring games that nobody can stomach or nobody can watch. That's the reality of it. College football sucks without its star players. That's the truth, and I think that's the truth for any. You can say that about any sport. That would be like watching the Lakers in postseason play and LeBron and Anthony Davis opting out and just deciding not to play. What the hell's the point? That's like the load management in the NBA. People pay so much money to go see their favorite athletes just to find out that they're just sitting. You know, it's kind of comparable. Who the hell wants to go watch that? If I'm going to a Lakers game, I want to see Anthony Davis. Now, obviously, if they're injured, that's different. But if they're just sitting because of load management or anything like that, first of all, I think the NBA season is kind of way too long. That's a lot of games to play, but almost as bad as baseball. But baseball is so much worse. But, you know, why would I want to go pay good money to see two big school names? Like, if I just don't want to see horrible professional sports play or college play. It's just not appealing for anyone. And it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do any good for the sport. Who honestly wants to sit and watch all that crap? Nobody. I struggled to watch Ohio State and Missouri. I turned it off at halftime because I could not stand just to watch punt after punt after punt after punt. It was so unappealing, so boring. There was nothing to watch. Hell, if Marvin Harrison just played, I would have watched the whole game because at least he's box office. He's fun to watch. He's probably the greatest wide receiver prospect we've ever seen in college football. Ohio State did him so many disservices. They wasted that man's entire career at Ohio State as far as I'm concerned, but it's just the principle that so many players are opting out, and it's all the good ones. That's part of the reason that we watch college football is to see those top-end athletes go at it to compete with each other. You know, that's the beauty of it. So I'm going to play a little clip for you guys. It's by Chris from ESPN First Take, Chris Russo. He goes on a tangent about Florida State players opting out and everything from the bowl games. And partially, I'm going to defend it, and partially, I'm going to disagree with it, and I'll explain it after I play this clip for you guys.
How about Florida State? Florida State had every politician known to man write letters to the college football playoff discussing how they got jobbed and didn't get a chance to play in the Final Four, which, by the way, that committee did a great job. Nobody in America, including Stephen A. on New Year's Day, betting my house with Fat Rob, wants to sit there and watch Florida State get manhandled by Michigan. Thank God they didn't put them in the Final Four. They didn't deserve to be there because of the injury of the quarterback. But now, after they moaned and groaned, they have a chance to sit there and play Georgia. Georgia, probably still the best team in college football. And you know what? You would think they would use that game as a chance to show, you know what? We should have been in the Final Four. We're going to go beat Georgia. We'll show you what they're all about. And you know what? They all opted out. They're all not going to play in the game. So here it is. I had to listen to Florida State moan and groan for weeks about how they got royally burned. And then they got a chance to tell us why they should have been in the Final Four against the Bulldogs. They played them. I think it's I don't know what bowl. It's the Orange Bowl. They played them in the Orange Bowl, and all of them have backed out. Running back, tight end, defensive back. That doesn't show me any guts at all.
See, I mean, that's the honest-to-God truth. Now, first of all, I will explain this. Okay, so USC played Louisville in, I believe it was the Cotton Bowl, whatever bowl game it was. USC played Louisville. Same team Florida State beat in the ACC Championship that they claim they deserve to be in the college football playoff. Well, Caleb Williams didn't play He opted out, of course. Miller Moss, I believe that's his name, backup for USC, threw for 6 touchdowns and went absolutely ballistic against the Louisville Cardinals. USC handled them, and the backup quarterback played his ass off, and they beat the hell out of Louisville. Well, guess what? Backup quarterback for USC absolutely lit Louisville up. What did Tate Rodemaker do for Florida State? 16-6. That was the final score of that game. Rodemaker looked like ass. So there's your nail in the coffin, Florida State, when it comes to, being in the college football playoff. A backup quarterback for USC just absolutely demolished Louisville. And you guys won 16-6. That's enough said. But after all this, what Chris Russo said, I understand it, but also I disagree with it. Florida State, if you wanted to prove that you deserve to be in that college football playoff, guess what? Go out there and prove it. Beat Georgia, who many believe was still one of the 4 best teams and should have been in the playoff regardless, just losing to Alabama. You could have went out there and proved yourself that, we deserve to be in. We can compete with the top dogs. I don't think there's any chance that Florida State beats Georgia in the Orange Bowl. Absolutely zero chance. But on the flip side of it, if I am Jared Verse, if I am Keon Coleman, if I am any of those top players for Florida State, why would I play in this game? Because I can make millions of dollars in the NFL, avoid getting injured. That's it. And if I'm not playing for a national title, why bother? See, this is why I think bowl games should be completely abolished and just keep the playoff format. The 12-team playoff, and that's it. No other outlier bowl games. That's it. Just keep the 12-team playoff, and that is it. There's no reason to have all these no-name bowl games that are just going to be so boring, so unwatchable, and just so putrid. But this is part of the reason, the reason that they're putrid and unwatchable is because all the great players are opting out. It's a double-edged sword. I love watching college football, but I didn't watch a single bowl game this year. The only bowl games I will watch, I watched the first half of the Ohio State game because I actually thought that was going to be an interesting game, Ohio State and Missouri. Well, guess what? That was the most boring first half I ever watched. Turned it off. And I will not watch another college football game until the college football playoff. So, NCAA, it's time to just get rid of all the bowl games and just keep the New Year's 6 bowl games and whatever other tier bowl games that you're going to make the 12-team playoff. I don't know exactly how they'll format that, especially with the New Year's 6 bowl games and how that'll play in. But I want just to see the 12-team playoff, no other bowl games, just the best of the best going at it for the final national championship. That's all I want. And being as that the college football playoff is about to happen, I'm going to make my final picks on who, better yet, I'm going to make my final prediction for the championship, and then obviously before the championship, I'll make one more prediction on who's going to win it all. But to finish off today's episode, Texas and Washington, I think Washington handles Texas. I think it's an absolute gun show. I think it's one of the best college football games of the year. I think it'll be more like a 37-34 Washington win. I'm taking Washington to beat the Longhorns in an absolute shootout and fireworks show. Michigan and Bama. As much as I love Michigan, as much as I love watching them play, and as much as I think they can win it all, I think Nick Saban is going to have those boys ready. I think Nick Saban is going to have Jalen Milroe, that offense, that defense. I think he's going to have the Tide rolling, and I think the Tide do roll Michigan. So my final prediction for the national championship is Washington versus Alabama. You heard it here first. And that's going to wrap it up this week on the Laykshow, everyone. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you again for a great 2023. I look forward to a great 2024 with all of you, and I really appreciate the support. I'm your host, Dominic Laykshow. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe